Among the veterans here at Jay County High School, they all agree that they've learned many skills that have helped them serve their communities as positive leaders and role models. Major Goley exemplifies his knowledge and skills gained from teaching and administrative work as crucial assets to the continued work with the high school in Afghanistan.
Well, I did 2010-11 for a year in Afghanistan and 2004 in Bosnia as a peacekeeper. Well, in Afghanistan, I was on an agribusiness development team. Agriculture is very important in Afghanistan, and what most folks don't realize is that most of our work there was not necessarily war fighting, although it was a war zone. A lot of it was what we call counterinsurgency, which is to take all the elements of a normal working country and support those things so that the terrorists cannot find a place to have a safe haven. So, strangely enough, I worked in agriculture, and in my job specifically, I worked in schools. I basically had to create my job assignment. There's no job description for the work I did there. So with my experience as a soldier and also as a school principal and a teacher, I just took everything I had worked on and knew, had experience with over the last 15 years, and went to a very different part of the world and worked with Afghan teachers, principals, government officials, and translators, contractors, brought them all together and said, how can we create opportunities for school kids to get a better education? Worked with their university in the province to get them to cooperate with their government, much like Purdue University does with county governments as extension agents from Purdue work in every one of our counties in Indiana. So it's just trying to use some experience and apply it to a very complex part of the world and use folks who are local to that area to work together to form a functioning government. So we have an FFA at Jay County High School. It's very large. I created a similar structure for Afghanistan schools. You have to use innovation, a little creativity, and just recognize what's possible on the ground, because this is a very unusual place. There's no electricity, there's nothing, the infrastructure is nothing like what we have here. So for me, the great enablers in the work that I was able to do in Afghanistan came from the Afghan partners that I had. Folks that had worked at their university could speak a little English and had some basic computing skills. And working with a very young Afghan who had graduated from an agriculture college that I was working with. So the key I found in working in Afghanistan, I suppose in any complex place like that, is to find local partners that you can work with.
Major Goley's talks of his sacrifices of being away from home has been a satisfying effort of planting the seed for hope and prosperity.
Because the solution I brought to the table as far as bringing agriculture education into schools and linking the universities and the government together may not be all that important in the long term. The long-term importance is, who were the people in that government, university, and schools, and will they learn from that experience when they truly want to solve a problem that is important for them to solve? That's probably the longer view of the work I did there, and that was satisfying to see something happen.
Although it wasn't easy being thousands of miles away from home, Major Goley found the working relationship with the principal and his students a lot less stressful than one would think.
That's the hardest part, there's no question about it. I wasn't a young man when I went there, so I had 3 kids of my own, all very young. I'd missed 2 years of their lives already through these deployments, so very, very tough for me as a father with that reality being separated. And knowing that, I made choices that if something bad were to happen to me there would have an impact on them for the rest of their lives, which was a painful thought. But I stayed as connected as I could through the internet, so I paid for about $100 a month out of my own pocket for basically dial-up speed internet. So family photos and things like that, and kept them at work, and when they would draw things for kindergarten assignments and things like that, I would be able to see them at my place where I work and plan my work.
Besides working with people from other nations, Major Goley will never forget the commitment of the soldiers who have served with him.
For me, it wasn't stressful to me. I loved it. And stress for me is coming back to the United States. That's when my most stressful period came, when I returned. So I don't know, it just depends on a person's personality. For me, you know, working in that environment and the dangers associated with it, I've never been more alive than when I heard the shots of rifle fire or rocket fire. So it clarifies the mind and makes all the things that seem to be important that really aren't going to go away from your mind, and you focus on the job at hand, and it's pretty, there's a clarity to that I really liked. You know, I joined when I was 17 years old, so I mean, I was still in high school, and this was before this Cold War was just ending with the Russians. I never had any idea that I'd be in Afghanistan one day. So I guess just not knowing what to expect, and then when I got there, figuring it out and getting through it. You know, I think the whole idea of counterinsurgency, where you're not necessarily war fighting, but you're using tools to bring stability to a very dangerous part of the world, those aren't things that I ever expected to do. But I think it made National Guardsmen all the better as a soldier there, because we are citizen soldiers. So a lot of the things that we do in our civilian jobs, we could bring that experience to that part of the world. But being with soldiers, that's probably the neatest thing for me. The quality of the average soldier, the personalities, their humor, being in a very, you know, shared sacrifice that we all went through together there. But that is why I continue to stay in. And that's the big lesson, even after 23 years, is that if you've never been in it, you can't quite describe the bonds that you create with your fellow soldiers. And that's something that I guess going into a war zone, that was a big outcome for me, was appreciating that. I think being a soldier made me a better teacher, and being a teacher made me a better soldier. They were very, very complementary careers. There's no question in my mind that I've been a beneficiary of the military. They paid for my college, they paid for my master's degree, and I've served to earn that benefit. So just the experience, though, of working in the efforts I've been a part of, that's helped too. I mean, the planning that goes into military operations, and the way in which all the functions of military power have to come together on the ground. This is no simple task. So I've watched very good leaders and very good planners, and I just try to take as much from them as I can and apply it to the challenges of working in our schools. And I think that's been a benefit to me. I also think being in the Army, it's sometimes in their mind frames, coming from an education background, there's a human element in teaching and learning, and sometimes that's very important in things that become bureaucratic. So I think they've been very mutually supportive. I think what I learned from that is that a lot of the solutions will only come from people coming together, and education, I think, brings people together. And all the radical terrorists and the values they represent, I think, are undermined by people who are educated. And I think the negative choices that terrorists provide to a population like Afghanistan become far less attractive when the people of those countries have a basic education and can think for themselves, read for themselves.
Basically, it's more about outsmarting terrorism.
Well, it's about looking at the root cause of terror. And when people have a job, when people have a family and a hope and a stake in society and in a future, then putting a suicide vest on yourself and blowing yourself up is a lot less attractive option for them, I think. I've just been very proud to have learned from our veterans. And I suppose now I am one, and that's an unusual role for me because I always just looked up to them and never expected to be one. So if you have one in your family, I think it's important to thank them for their service. And this means something to them, I assure you. And I think that's what I have learned as we approach Veterans Day, is how much more I appreciate my heroes, those guys from Vietnam and Korea and even World War II, who are rapidly passing from this world to the next. And take the time, reach out to someone in your family and say thank you. Ask them their story like you've asked me of mine. I think you might be interested to know their answer.
Thank you, Major Goley, for giving your time and talents helping in the betterment of lives, as well as your commitment to help making Jay County a greater place.
By the mid-70s, the Vietnam War was just coming to an end. Mr. Golden joined the Army in spring 1975 and soon was sent to Germany as an assisted helicopter pilot.
I was in from 1975 through 1978. They sent me to what was then the hot spot in the world in terms of confrontation and potential issues, and that was the border between East and West Germany. And I did border patrol. East Germany was a communist country, and West Germany was, like us, a democratic country. The relations between the two were very, very tense. And a lot of people from East Germany would try to flee, that is, cross the border, get over to West Germany. And my unit, I was a helicopter crew chief, we did border patrols. So we would hover at treetop level, look across and see the East Germans on the other side. That's what I did. When I joined in 1975, the draft was abolished. It no longer existed. It was strictly an all-volunteer military. So I did join. I didn't join necessarily for great patriotic reasons. I wanted to get the GI Bill so I could finish my college. I already had 2 years completed, and I knew at the end of my 3-year enlistment I would have the GI Bill, which would pay $12,000 towards my education. And if you have a high enough score, you can pretty much choose to join whatever branch you want and do what you want to do. And I chose the Army. I thought maybe I would be like a helicopter pilot because it just looked like fun.
Yeah.
And so that was how I made my choice. Physically it was very demanding, emotionally very demanding. And I would say it this way. I mean, I learned some life lessons.
Yeah.
And the first lesson I learned was that I'm not in charge. You know, I have a boss, and I need to be able to get along with people, work with them. It doesn't mean I hang out with them, but I need to be able to get along with people, be a team player. Well, I learned I didn't like being shot at. And I learned that I liked living.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of the things that I learned in the military are things that have really served me well later on. And I think just the idea of sacrifice, giving up now for what happens later. I mean, I gave up 3 years of my life so that later I could have the GI Bill in my college, and here I am, so it worked.
Yeah.
And I think maybe we, just as a society, perhaps lost track of the idea of, like, let's sacrifice now so that tomorrow is better for me. I guess the friendships that I made, those still mean a lot to me, and I haven't seen any of those people for years.
Yeah.
But I still remember them, and, you know, at that time and place, we were very, very isolated from back here in the United States.
Yeah.
We referred to this as the world. So we were always excited knowing how many days it was till we got back to the world.
Yeah.
But these people were at the same place I was, and we were doing border patrol, and every now and then the other guys would shoot at us just for fun. And so it was a very tight bond. They were like my family.
Thank you, Mr. Golden, for all you have done. We appreciate the years you gave up to help protect us and our freedom.
Can you please state your rank and branch of service?
My branch of service is the United States Army, and my rank is Master Sergeant.
Why did you join the military?
I initially joined the military for the college benefits and the money that they give, and also I wanted to serve my country.
Tell me about a couple of your most memorable experiences.
One of my most memorable experiences is the first time that I ever jumped out of an airplane, as far as when I went to airborne school in 1983. We had to jump from 2,000 feet, and the very first time they opened that door and I had to jump out was pretty memorable. And then also another time I was in Thailand, and we had an opportunity to jump out of hot air balloons, and that was another memorable experience.
Which war did you serve in?
Served in the first Gulf War, Operation Desert Storm.
How do people entertain themselves while they're deployed?
I guess when you sit there and say, how do people entertain themselves? Really, there isn't much time to really entertain themselves. We sit around and sometimes we get to watch movies. When we're in the rear, as far as we're not deployed and actually out in combat or something like that, there'll be different things like that. There's music and stuff like that. We'll play football or basketball games and stuff like that.
What did you do when you were on leave?
Most of the time when I was on leave, what I would do, I spent time with my family and my wife, and we'd visit family members and stuff like that.
Do you recall the day your service ended?
I recall the day that actually happened. I was working at Ball State University at the Army ROTC program, and my final day was there as far as that goes. And they held a formation as far as out there, and they flew the flag over Ball State University, and they actually presented me with that flag on my retirement day.
What did you do in the days and weeks following the day your service ended?
I immediately went to work as far as I took a job as a human resource manager at Ball State University, and then from there I got a job at Blackford High School, and I opened up the junior ROTC program.
Have you enjoyed teaching the JROTC here at Blackford?
Yes, I thoroughly enjoy this.
Thank you for your service, Master Sergeant Kaufman, and thank you for allowing me to interview you.
Thank you.